Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is the Aspen City Council regular meeting for January 14th, 2025. That's a call to order. Could we have a roll call for attendance, please?
Councillor Doyle.
Here.
Councillor Guth.
Here.
Councillor Howenstein.
Here.
Councillor Rose.
Here.
Mayor Tory.
Here as well. Tonight we have a very special scheduled public appearance, an opportunity for swearing in of a new officer. And I'll join you out front. Don't mind right there.
Perfect.
Just gonna point that at you. Point that at you. All right. If you'll please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name,
I, Karla Enriquez,
do solemnly affirm that I will support
do solemnly affirm that I will support
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the ordinances of the City of Aspen,
the ordinances of the City of Aspen,
that I will faithfully perform the duties
that I will faithfully perform the duties
of a police officer of the City of Aspen, Colorado,
of a police officer of the City of Aspen, Colorado,
that I will be mindful
that I will be mindful
of the mission, values, and philosophy
of the mission, values, and philosophy
of the Aspen Police Department
of the Aspen Police Department
in providing respectful,
providing respectful,
thoughtful professional services
thoughtful professional services
to any person seeking assistance from me.
to any person seeking assistance from me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You know, as I always say, this is one of the greatest honors for me as mayor, and I so appreciate everybody that's in the APD for all the work you do. I think it's been noticeable this winter, over the last months, if you will, but town feels great, and we owe a lot of that to you, because you're the guys that make us feel safe, secure, and a city that is very, very welcoming. I see you guys out there every day, and I really appreciate it. When I say guys, guys and girls, of course. If you would like to say any words, and maybe just tell people a little bit of where you come from. And
First and foremost, thank you to Chief Kim Ferber and Linda Consuegra and everybody at the APD for giving me this opportunity and welcoming me into the family that is APD. I'm forever thankful. I'm actually born and raised here in Aspen. I grew up in the Valley, so it's very heartwarming for myself to be a part of the community and be able to make a difference in the community that I grew up in. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all around town.
Now I feel less safe.
Now is an opportunity for citizens' comments and petitions. It's an opportunity for council to address, for citizens to address council on any items that are not scheduled for a public hearing. We do ask that you limit your comments to about 3 minutes so everybody has a fair and equal opportunity to speak. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak this evening? Mike, you're right up in front.
Mike Maple, 1250 Mountain View Drive. I see tonight you're considering two items that are of interest to me. One is a modification to demolition standards, and secondly, a review of GMQS policies and procedures. Dating back to May and again in July, you all had some discussion of moving forward with modifications to construction demolition standards. At that time, Mayor Tory and two other members of the council indicated that as part of the consideration of moving forward with stricter demolition standards, that you would revisit the demolition allotment program that has been a disaster for our community. Here we are, six or 8 months later. I see that legislation is now before you, but there is no mention of a review of demolition allotments. So I would ask that you, as a city council, not pass these new demolition standards without doing what you should also be doing, and that is revisiting the demolition allotment program. At this time, you all are also revisiting GMQS, which is where the demolition allotment program resides. Yet, in that reconsideration, there is also no consideration of the disastrous demolition allotment program. So that's extremely disappointing to me as a citizen, and I believe inconsistent with the mayor and perhaps others' representations about your review of this program. So I ask that you revisit what has been a disaster for our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Francis?
Hi there, Mayor Tory, council members. Pleasure to be here today and to address the council about a couple things that maybe some of the community has on their mind, and I definitely do. I don't know, the entrance to Aspen, difficult for me to say, but we got to keep working on it. And I don't know, there's maybe a myriad of solutions out there, multimodal transportation, pedestrian stuff, cars, a bridge that could be articulated, quite possibly an articulated suspension bridge where you build the towers on either side and then able to widen the bridge. Possibility, I'm just inventing some of this stuff, but I looked it up in Wikipedia, and it's possible to come up with some kind of solution for the bridge to be able to widen it while we're still using it, and then proper evacuation protocols. You know, climate crisis, wildfires, all kinds of things are causing this to be more urgent concern. Let's see, that's about a minute. Another thing that I'm concerned about, and it goes along with environmentalism, is this thing with the paper bags. And if they're recyclable, if they're compostable, there should be some kind of exemption to be able to have this as part of a service when we're in a retail store, a supermarket, stuff like that, where we have composting and recycling for these bags that can be either that or it can be reused. I've been using the same lunch bag for, I don't know, a few months since last year. Oh, Happy New Year, it's 2025, so we got some new stuff going on, and yeah, there's a president-elect that's coming that we might want to, think about what the future holds for Aspen. The spotlight is on us, and we can do all kinds of things here in the great state of Colorado and the city of Aspen. Finally, besides all the environmental issues, I read a couple things in the paper. Someone was asking, sorry about that, when will Aspen be ours again? I think it's still ours. There were some valid points. Is that 3 minutes?
It is.
Dang. I think the town's still ours, and like I say, there's a spotlight on us. We'll be able to get some things done, and I'd like the armory to be, as you stated, Tori, a place for community discussion, a community gathering place, something for the actual residents and workforce of Aspen to gather. And I'm suggesting, again, the Aspen Tea Pad. I think there's a lot we can do with cannabis and cannabis consumption. So I guess that's enough. Happy New Year again. Thanks for doing everything you're doing here in our town.
Thanks, Francis.
Awesome.
Francis.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other members of the public comment this evening? Looking online. All right. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and bring it back to council table. This is an opportunity for council members and mayor's comments. Council members this evening. Bill, since you're far flung there, if you can hear me, I'll start with you.
Sure, thanks. Just wanted to express my deepest sympathies, empathies for everyone in California that's been experiencing the fires, that are losing homes and lives and having their properties destroyed. It's totally terrible. It certainly scares me, and I just want to express my interest in being as proactive and aggressive as we can possibly be as a community to protect lives and property in our community. So I just wanted to express my interest in continuing to work towards proactive, aggressive, tangible efforts and not be reactive. Thanks.
Thank you. Other members of council this evening? John?
Yeah, I'd like to actually add on to that. Thanks for bringing that up, Bill. The LA fires have dramatically shown me, again, the dangers of that we face here in our community. Read a story about forget who it was, somebody who was in their pool in Pacific Palisades one day, and the next day their whole house is gone. Nobody saw this coming. I'm reminded of the fires in Jasper, Alberta, Lahaina, Maui, and Ruidoso, New Mexico. None of those communities expected to face the devastation they faced. And for those of us who say it can't happen, those who will say it can't happen here, yes, it can. So while I am still on council, I would definitely like to focus on better evacuation routes out of our city, more resilient water supplies so we can fight a fire and not have dry hydrants like happened in California. I'm not saying that could happen here, but I think it could. Anyway, thanks. That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Any comments? Not really, no. Sam, tonight?
Yeah. I'll continue on the fighting. I've been emailing the city forester and ComDev and feel really assured by the fact that it seems like we are doing everything within reason when it comes to fire resiliency of this community. From the city forester, we're continuing support with the Aspen Fire Department's chipping program, participation in the Roaring Fork Wildfire Collaborative, bark beetle treatments on Aspen Mountain, support of the U.S. Forest Service Sunnyside Burn, and development of a forest health management plan for Shadow Mountain. And from the ComDev side, we are doing a lot when it comes to the hardening of homes, which is really wonderful. Historic preservation is like one specific caveat, but we still work on that and we'll have greater discussions. And I say all this because A, we want to sit up here and feel like we're doing everything we can. And B, I also am very passionate about evacuation routes, but as I'll quote our wildfire coordinator at Aspen Fire Department, we want a town to come back to as well. Getting out is one thing, but having town burned down would be awful regardless. So trying to harden our homes, have a great tree program, and do as much as we can from what our standpoint is really important as well. So it's all encompassing. The other thing, do you want me to bring it up or do you want to?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the information memo that we received about the entrance to Aspen. There are two aspects to it that I wanted to comment on tonight. One is the bullet number 1, just transportation needs and project expectations. It says not a majority position on these topics, and I don't want to go through them now, but as a council, I'd like to turn to council and say I think we should create a collaborative list and do straw poll vote on some of these ones as if these are things that matter towards a new environmental impact study, because I think there is majority consensus on at least the vast majority of the items listed in this information memo, and I think it's vitally important that we can come to a consensus on this, because to me, and the reason why I don't like the preferred alternative as currently proposed is because I don't think it solves a lot of the problems that this list has, and creates a lot of new problems. And one of the reasons through the evolution of learning about the entrance to Aspen, I feel so passionate that now we need to go to a new environmental impact study, which we should have done after the last vote failed in 2001, is because we need to put modern day solutions to modern day issues that we're having. We can't put a 1990 solution to something that doesn't solve the issues of today, because it's more than just evacuation routes. It is about traffic. It is about getting cars out of the West End. It is about potentially needing to use the open space. And it is about wildfire, and it wasn't in the 90s when they studied this. And then the last thing, keep that in the back pocket. And the last thing to note is the next steps. And then the next steps, it says, based on 2 charter amendment ballot questions on the March ballot, the results of which could impact stakeholder and public input for the pre-NEPA efforts, the team will pause outreach for development of a new purpose and need into mid-March and after. And I understand that from just the sentence of it all, but I really am not interested in pausing any pre-NEPA efforts at this point, because, at least as a personal belief, despite what happens in the March election I think this is more important from a council perspective, but also despite what happens in the 2 ballot initiatives, I still think we need to go to a new EIS, because I think we need a new EIS to actually move forward the best possible solution for Aspen. It's been an evolution for me, but I would say to anyone that's interested in the entrance to Aspen and thinks the preferred alternative is great on paper, I understand where you're coming from, because it does look great. It has a second bridge, but there's a lot more that goes on to it. Don't you want improved traffic? Don't you want not to have a stoplight at 7th and Main? These are other things that I think are massive to our community, and a reason why I think we need to continue to move forward towards the EIS process.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I was a little surprised at the info memo. Sarah, can you talk to us a little bit about this next steps that says that we've paused outreach for development of the new purpose and need into mid-March and after?
Certainly, some of the state laws around elections do not allow the appearance of lobbying for specific solutions or processes or outcomes. And specifically, that means that because there are 2 ballot questions, whether there's 1 or 2, that conducting outreach right before a ballot question in the political environment of the election could be viewed as an election law violation by staff. And so we have to comply with that law. A good example of that right now is happening in Glenwood Springs, where a private citizen was just authorized to sue the city when staff believed they were only providing factual information. However, the election, the body that reviews that election complaint felt that that's perhaps not the case. And so given that it is, doesn't mean that we're not preparing and doing that work behind the scenes to be ready. However, we're not prepared to take public commentary, engage with the public, and put those employees or the city in the liability risk of litigation because we didn't wait 2 more weeks until after an election.
Is that legal's opinion?
I do agree with that assessment. There is an issue about ever having the city itself take action that would be considered advocacy or any kind of position regarding a potential ballot issue. So if that's what would result from continuing this outreach and effort, it could be deemed an advocacy for some side of this election. We always have a right to answer any questions that are brought to staff. Always has a right, the council always have a right to answer any questions, but they don't have a right to submit information that could be deemed as a potential advocacy for a position. So I think that's what
Yeah, particularly
So
because the
recipients-
outreach process involves the creation of new documents, new questions, things that were not in the public record prior to the ballot question being set.
If that's the case, and that's what, I mean, that, I understand that's what that could deem to be doing, and we could be faced with some complaint that we are attempting to advocate one position or the other. It's just not a step that would be appropriate to take right now, given the upcoming election, or I think I should rephrase that. It could be a problem if we continue that.
John?
Is the Glenwood complaint, that you're referring to, the Tony Hershey complaint?
I do believe he is one in that situation, yes.
Okay. I think it was about the marketing, anyway.
Well, was it information or was it marketing, right?
Yeah,
It's just, for the needs for this community, there will continue to be work happening behind the scenes by staff, but I just am not comfortable with placing them in that situation. They are answering factual questions for those who call right now, but to launch a large public campaign with information just a few days or week before the campaign, before the election, really seems unnecessary drama to me, quite honestly, in the process. Let's let the election happen and the community provides input, and that will be one more data point for the stakeholder engagement.
I appreciate that example because it shows what we're up against.
I have a hand up by Ward, then Sam.
Yeah, Jim, I wish you could share with us and the public what involvement individual council members can take in the election process as individual citizens not associated with their position on city council.
You can be position you wish. You are citizens, and you can engage in activity. And as I point out often, that city staff can't take a position as a citizen and acknowledge and indicate that they're city staff. I can't write a letter to the paper, advocate in position, and say, I am the city attorney. People may know I'm the city attorney, but I can't say that. There's an exception in our code for city council members. You can advocate any position you wish politically as a citizen. You may even identify yourself as a council member. Staff cannot do that, and the body itself cannot do that. You can do one thing as a body, which is pass a resolution support of or opposed to any ballot issue, not a candidate, but a ballot issue. You cannot spend money to publicize it. You can put it forth in our normal course of business, which is published through the clerk, but you cannot spend money to submit that to the public. As individuals, you can do whatever you feel is appropriate.
And Jim, you said you could identify yourself as a member of city council.
Correct.
But do you need to have a disclaimer that I am not speaking for the city council?
Well, I don't think you need to explain that. It would, if somebody believes you're speaking for the council, it's as a body, then I don't know how to address that. It's not a bad idea to do it, but is that something that's mandated, that you actually specifically disclaim it? Not really, but is it a good idea? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I would say it's a best practice, but it's not often done. You write your letter, sign it, Ward Howenstein, city council member. Without the disclaimer, it's not a violation of the law, in my opinion.
Thank you for that explanation. Obviously, I was not aware, and I just appreciate learning about that sort of thing. But on the same note, bullet item number 1, I do think we as a council should try to come to some sort of consensus about the transportation needs and project expectations, because I think that does help the conversation, especially as this winter progresses, and does help push this project forward towards the actual best possible solution.
Yeah, if that's something that could take place in this process, I still question whether us moving forward with this really is directly related to the 2 amendment ballot questions. I would think that this work could be moving forward, but, you know, and maybe Jim.
And we can certainly take a look at it again, but I think I have to agree with Sarah. From what I know about it, it certainly would be arguable that it was taking a position as a body, but I'm happy to look at it further if you need that.
I would just be interested. I mean, yeah, like I said, I don't see the direct association. The process that we're entering in here is for an evaluation. So I don't think we're really advocating in regards to either one of the ballot questions. And I don't think that the wording in them, I don't think really would be impacted by moving forward with some of the work that needs to get done here. It does become a matter of perception, and
yeah, and it certainly, you know, no matter which way you, which side looks at it, and the way they want is that, you know, we could find ourselves behind complaints, and that's always possible.
Always, right? on just about everything. As far as a process for refining transportation needs and project expectations, Sarah, is there an opportunity for council to, are you looking for an opportunity for council to get more majority position on these topics? When I read them, I think they're all included. I mean,
That's what I thought too.
it's, yes, this is consideration of all of these. But do we need to either agree on all of these or shortlist these?
I don't think that's necessary at that time. You've already directed a public involvement process, and I'd encourage you to listen to that input from the public before starting to call a list. They may raise very valid points that you should take into consideration. And we have that direction to go ahead and do that work. So that's my personal take on it. You certainly can have any conversations you want to have about it in the meantime, for sure. But narrowing the list right before going out for public involvement at this point, I think would not be the best move you could make in trying to find a consensus or at least middle ground position amongst the stakeholders.
Thank you. Yeah, it just wasn't clear from how this was presented in the memo if that was something that was desired or not, stating no majority position. You know, I'll just say again, for me, it's inopportune and unfortunate that we have these two citizen initiatives that are seemingly coming from a personal point of views instead of working with the community. Now we're seeing a delay on the entire efforts for the entrance to Aspen and that conversation and the process that we're in. So again, it's a disappointment, but that's where we are. Any other comments?
Yeah, pardon me. I don't think that it's a delay. We had an opportunity back in September to put this before the voters, and the council couldn't agree on that. I think that there's a clear choice that's coming up for the public to vote on. And a question is that there was a four-part process before CDOT and FHWA opens an EIS, and we had to prove stakeholder and community involvement was one of those. And is CDOT and FHWA in charge of that outreach and stakeholder involvement?
At this time, no. That is the responsibility of the City of Aspen, because City of Aspen is the one who will be a signatory authority requesting the opening. So this public input will assist in that process. Most notably is that if the project objectives remain the same, then the FHWA is going to question why they should open up the ROD. However, I don't know what goes in its place right now until there's some robust conversation with the stakeholders. And that will be a process of the council reevaluating that list to go in your request letter to CDOT and FHWA. You know, and I just want to reassure the public, like, the project is not stopped, because I've heard that language a couple times during this conversation. There is still a lot of preparation work going on by the consultancy team and by city staff. We are just not going out the last week of February, as was initially planned, to start asking other stakeholders for their input. We're just waiting until after March 4th. So we're talking about a less than a 2-week delay on that particular step. And for something that is so important to this community and a big conversation, I think the community can wrap their minds around why we think that's the best for the community, given that it's been 30 years plus already. So 10 days to ensure a fair electoral process is a fair trade-off.
I appreciate you giving the public so much credit. That's very nice of you. Any other comments or questions?
On a different topic, I was just wondering if there was an update on the Highway 82 crossing at Aspen Country and where that was at. I'd asked about that the last meeting in December.
Sure. So we are pulling together some historical information on previous studies for that area. The police investigation is not finalized yet either. And that will be an informing piece of information, I think, for that conversation as well. And so we are doing work behind the scenes, but have not scheduled it for info only or for a council discussion yet.
Understood. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. A couple comments from me this evening. I as well just want to extend condolences and thoughts and prayers to those that are suffering in Los Angeles and around our country or the world that have friends and family in that area. It is not over yet. I wanted to make a quick announcement about the APSHA survey that is currently open. It is open for one more day. This is a survey that is available to all stakeholders. That's residents, that's non-residents in affordable housing, that's general public, or anybody that's interested. There is an opportunity for your input in an APSHA survey. This is to guide a little bit of the future, maybe to get an idea about what community expectations are around our housing program. So if you can, please go to the city's website and click on the APSHA survey. You can also probably get there from the APSHA website as well. Again, that will be closing tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow will be your last day. I wanted to give just a quick shout out to a couple of great events that are going on here. First, the World Pro Ski Tour was here in Aspen this past weekend. I don't know if you saw it, but there was some great downhill racing on Aspen Mountain. This week is Gay Ski Week. We want to say hello and welcome all the delegates of the Aspen Gay Ski Week back to Aspen for, I believe it's 53 or 4 years, perhaps. 48. Thank you, 48 years. And then lastly, of course, the X Games is right around the corner. That'll be here next week. So everybody, I hope you've got your cold weather gear ready to go, because it's going to be dropping to -10 in the next week. Prepare. With that, we'll look for agenda amendments this evening. I see none. And city manager's comments.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I have 3 topics for you tonight. The first one is on wildland fires, and I really encourage the community to go to the Roaring Fork Valley Wildfire Collaborative website. It gives you a lot of ideas of what you can do as an individual to harden your property, to manage vegetation on private property, and ways that will make that perhaps more affordable for you. For example, the chipper service from the Aspen Fire Department when you're doing mitigation. Again, the council's been a leader with reviewing and making changes to the landscape and urban forestry requirements here in the city. And the last thing I would just say is that, like, today I went and had, just popped in my walk-arounds into the building team, and then I asked them, what do you think we could do, or what could we do more? And their suggestion was the next step at the council table for the built environment is a really big policy matter, and that is to switch to only allowing non-combustible building materials. And that has a lot of pros and cons to it. And so that is an area certainly within the council's authority to establish how something like that would play out. So just know that there are policy opportunities if you wish to be more aggressive within the council's purview of the land use code. We certainly do have some challenges with our historic resources too, and how do you preserve them and harden them. But I think staff's up for that challenge and is very eager to have some clarity for those property owners about how to walk that line, more than what we can offer them in today's historic preservation guidelines. There's the first one. Any questions on that before I move on?
Not a question, but just a comment of like, thank you for doing everything you can. And also I feel like this might be a good actual topic for a work session to talk about any and everything that we can do to make sure everyone knows in this community that we've put it all out on the table, discussed it, enacted on it, or denied it for a valid reason.
Sure, we're working on, I'll just call it a one-sheeter for now because I don't know how it's going to go out. Just sort of talking about what has even changed here and what are the rules here in Aspen that we've done to try to be responsive to this climate change impact. And then really encouraging that not everything here needs to be legislated. That there is a lot of opportunity for individual property owners and families and individuals to prepare themselves and their living quarters should something like this happen. So it's definitely a partnership for the whole community to move forward and build that resiliency in. The next item I have for you is that you may have seen the media coverage that our region was successful in securing a $2 million federal grant to evaluate transportation around the Aspen airport. It's called a RAISE grant. And Pickens County is the lead agency with, and there was a letter of supports from the city of Aspen and the town of Snowmass Village for this because we do think a more integrated transportation study and infrastructure around the airport really benefits many of the goals of our communities, our collective communities. Since this is a regional approach, there's been a request I received today from Pickens County for confirmation about whether this council could support using $150,000 of the EOTC contingency that you approved in the 2025 EOTC budget as a portion of the matching dollars for this grant. So for the $2 million, there had to be a 10% local match. So I'm here before you to let you know that request has come in, and the council can choose to review this formally by saying that you'll require a meeting of EOTC to advance that request, or you could also, if you'd like, if you're in support of this, is to authorize me to issue Aspen's support for this match through just administrative processes that I have with my peers over at the county.
Did you say that we'd already approved it in the EOTC budget?
So the EOT budget had a $500,000 contingency in it, which you reviewed very carefully and required some additional follow-up work from the EOT staff member and the county manager on. So you reviewed that line item in detail. That's why I was questioned whether you would want an EOTC meeting since you're familiar with that line item. But technically, Pickens County is the appropriating legal entity for those dollars, and if you are supportive of the EOTC being a source of matching dollars, you're welcome to either express that through your own vote tonight, if as a motion potentially. I'd have to ask Jim if we needed to notice that since I just heard it today. So really your options are vote at this table and just say yes, to give me administrative authority to work it out with support of the dollars going forward, or to call an EOTC meeting, particularly if you're not in support of it as a body here. I would encourage that last option so that there can be some honest and clear conversation amongst the three public entities.
I'm gonna go to Bill first and then John.
Okay.
Bill?
Thanks so much. Sarah, could you just recap what the purpose of the funds request is? What do they intend to spend the money on? Thanks.
Sure. The $2 million is a planning grant to sort out how people are moving to, from, and around the airport. So it affects Highway 82 It affects, this is an opportunity to us to figure out how bus service to the lumberyard might fit in better in a regional system, as an example. It could be that there are alternative modes of transportation besides, public transportation besides bus looked at. And so this is really about saying, can we create some kind of cohesive system from the park and ride pretty much through the Buttermilk Light about how public transit functions in this area with the existing conditions, and then what are the proposed conditions. Because the airport layout plan just has a block of space for some type of public transit and semi-private transit activity to occur in. It needs refinement. And that's something that can happen now that the airport layout plan has been approved by the FAA.
Okay, and one quick follow-up is, you mentioned semi-private, meaning some kind of shuttles or
Yeah, hotel, shuttles.
taxis, limos, et cetera.
Yeah, ride-sharing providers, all those kinds of things. There's got to be some work on all of that. Not only how do they interface with the airport, but what are expectations along the 82 corridor in this area for some of these services?
Okay, so it's all encompassing for different means of transportation to and from the airport, not just RAFTA. Is that correct?
RAFTA will definitely be key, as well as the city of Aspen's bus service. So for example, with a lumberyard route, there could be the potential that there's 15-minute service from the airport into town and back out to the airport through a shared service between the city and the county, as an example of improving the level of service from the airport for locals and guests. So it's really to help do that work without doing all that planning and study work on the local government's pocketbooks, and the federal government is excited to support it in this case. And I think we're pretty fortunate right now to get some planning dollars, I think, out of the federal government for public transit right now.
John?
Okay, great. And at the risk of redundancy, just to be clear, this does include the public transit components that you mentioned, but we're not forgetting about the private and semi-private means that people also use to get to and from the airport, and the designs and plans will contemplate and incorporate that.
I can say it will contemplate it. I can't say it will incorporate it. I think the study work needs to be done for that to get answered. And again, this study is going to be led by Picken County, and the additional matching dollars are coming from the airport fund itself. So I think they have a very high interest in addressing those pieces of it. But the airport fund cannot pay for the study of Highway 82. It's a restricted fund. It has to be used within the boundaries of the airport. So that $50,000 is to cover some of those other services you're hopeful for, Bill, but it's not really within the city of Aspen's purview of how that finishes up. That's at the BOCC table.
Okay, yeah, I actually wasn't thinking about this so much about Highway 82 specifically, but my fear is that we're going to design this great public transit system with these dollars, and we're going to forget about rideshare, for example. And we all know that rideshare is not super robust in Aspen today, but maybe it becomes that way in the future. And if we don't have a thoughtful sort of pickup zone for rideshare because the funds weren't there to incorporate it in part of the study, I think we'd be remiss. So I just want to make sure that and I'm supportive of this, I just want to make sure that it's broad enough that it incorporates sort of all means of transportation to and from the airport, and we're not just pigeonholing ourselves.
Sure. So I want to be careful of that. There may be certain modes that have been proposed in the community that might not make the cut for further study. Okay. So I think rideshare is a much more practical model, and I can definitely carry that message back to the county with whatever direction I might receive this evening about the rideshare services in particular. I personally have some concerns also about how the concierge and shuttle services for the lodging product is happening over there too. That could use some refinement.
Thanks.
John?
I was going to ask where the other 50 grand was coming from to make the matching grant, but Sarah's answered that question.
Good. Any other questions? Ward?
Yeah, I certainly support EOTC spending $150,000 for this. And the question is that, would the transportation flow that EOTC is going to be conducting qualify for some of those federal funds to evaluate the flow at the AABC and the Highway 82 corridor?
For the public transit component, yes, right? This is the pre-work to go after other funding opportunities and funding partners for the public transit activities in that section of the corridor. The individual private vehicle use, I would have to double check with the county, but I think that there will be traffic counts and things like that done, but not necessarily extensive look at solutions. I think that is more in the realm of what City Council has been looking at doing. That is for a much longer stretch than just this area that I'm talking about, this grant request is for.
Now, pursuant to that, I would move that the City Council approve and recommend to EOTC the expenditure of $150,000 towards a matching race grant.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second on the floor.
I want to make sure.
Is that okay?
I do believe it is, although what I would prefer to say is that council does support the previous budgeting of the amount from which this is being taken. It's really an approval of what has been budgeted before. And I just want to make sure that's clear, because we notice this is a budgetary item. But you're not really doing that. You're just acknowledging that that was previously budgeted before as a discretionary item that can be used by the EOT to support this grant.
Pickens County and Summit Village would also have to approve this?
Well, again, arguably it already has been. I don't know if Pickens County is pursuing this. I don't know what Snowmouse is planning to do.
They're going to, I highly suspect they're going to support, they had a very strong support letter for the grant application.
Okay.
But again, I want to just emphasize that this is a previously budgeted item, and you're just acknowledging that this is an appropriate use of a previously budgeted item.
Would you add that language to your motion?
So move.
Let's see if I can,
You can, yeah, so moved is okay.
yeah, so move the City Council approves the previously approved budget of the contingency fund from the EOTC to spend as part of the matching grant for the RAISE federal funds.
That's okay.
And that's
Mouthful.
the seconds again. Bill, further
Yeah,
discussion?
thanks. And again, I'm supportive of it. I'd love if we as council could direct Sarah to make sure that this incorporates multiple transportation modes, and it's, doesn't accidentally pigeonhole us into ignoring the realities of different transportation methods.
Yes, I understand council's interest in ensuring that, and I will carry that message back. I see heads shaking in the room, Bill. That might be a little hard for you to see.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
With a motion and a second, could we have a roll call vote for the motion on the floor?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. Any other comments this evening?
I do. I have my final one, and my computer just went to sleep. Sure. My last topic is a little personal, and I just wanted to answer it in the Senate because I've received a lot of questions from the public regarding last week's announcement of my candidacy in another community. So I just want the community to know that in Colorado, city managers often participate in public interview processes, and those processes are public to ensure transparency, accountability, and public trust. These processes allow the community to observe candidates, that provides feedback, and ensure that the selection aligns with the community's needs and values. Well, this openness can definitely feel intrusive as a candidate, the seat I'm sitting in. I think it's an essential part of the rules and the belief in the democratic process and the value of community and stakeholder engagement. So I just want you to know that I'm committed to Aspen and advancing the policies that the council chooses and the values of our community while serving as the city manager here. I have full confidence in the staff team who work tirelessly to support our mountain culture and community values. And I thank the community for their ongoing support of Aspen, me, and my family as we're working through this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Board reports this evening? Any board updates?
None over Christmas.
I have just a few. I want to start, though, with an acknowledgement for Sister Cities. I did attend a Sister Cities meeting last Thursday where we have two groups of students in. Queenstown, New Zealand is here, as well as Shimokap, Japan, although Ward was part of the group that took a large number of delegates to the airport this morning, I believe.
The whole group from Shimokap left this morning. They were here for 9 or 10 days. A lot going on.
Yeah. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Sister Cities program, it's an exchange program with students, ski patrollers, city and government employees and council members. It's economic exchange. It's just a role of support. The Sister Cities mission is stated as spreading peace and understanding, one person at a time in an international setting. So we have always enjoyed them coming here. One of the neatest things about Shimokap and our relationship with Japan is that several members of our community have gone over to be teachers and to work in Shimokap, and some of them actually stay. Some of them get married, start families, and become permanent residents of Shimokap. And we were lucky enough to have one of, Corey Lukes, a young man who grew up here and was an exchange student himself. And he then married and lives in Shimokap now. His daughter was actually here for the last semester, and that was really wonderful to have her here. So just a shout out to Sister Cities and all the work that they do. For me, I've had a couple of meetings this new year, starting with yesterday. As I told you guys in a couple meetings ago, we at RAFTA have started a first and last mile mobility subcommittee, and we met on Monday morning, and we are talking about trying to get greater accessibility throughout the entire region for RAFTA and RAFTA riders. We're always looking for ways to increase ridership, and one of the ways that we seek to do that is through first and last mile mobility solutions, getting people from their homes to buses and from buses to their homes or workplaces, wherever they may be going. Last week, RAFTA also met, not once, but twice. Last Wednesday, I was part of the Corridor Covenant Enforcement Commission. We look over the Rio Grande Trail Corridor and make sure that the encroachments are being dealt with and that corridor is preserved for recreational and transit needs for our community. I can report back that from some, I think the numbers were 34 encroachments or potential violations 2 years ago. We have brought that down to 5. And of those 5, truthfully, they're all in process of being resolved. So great work by everybody that serves on that board and the staff at RAFTA. And of course, Cast Housing was last Monday as well, but I think we've talked about that briefly last week. No other board reports. That'll bring us further on our agenda. That takes us down to our consent calendar this evening. Our consent calendar consists of resolution number 1, designating the public posting place. Resolution number 4, animal shelter energy efficiency upgrades. And the draft minutes of December 3rd, 9th, and 17. Are there any items council members need pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, I could take a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass the consent calendar.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote for the consent calendar this evening?
Counselor Doyle.
Yes.
Counselor Guth.
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein.
Yes.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Mayor Tory.
Yes. Thank you. Consent calendar passes 5-0. That'll bring us to our public hearings this evening. Our first public hearing this evening is for ordinance number 21. This is the adoption of the chapter 29.02, construction and demolition debris diversion.
All right. Good evening, Council. There we go. My name is Ainsley Breslin-Smith, and I'm the Waste Diversion and Recycling Program Administrator for the Environmental Health and Sustainability Department. And we are here tonight for a second reading of Chapter 29.02, our Construction and Demolition Debris Diversion Ordinance. Accompanying me at the table, we have
Trisha Aragon, the city engineer, and we also have Aaron Reed, who's in charge of our construction mitigation program. He's back there.
And Ben Anderson, Community Development Director.
Great. We were last here for first reading on December 17th, where council invited us back here tonight for a second reading. Listed on the screen are questions that council asked us during that session that I will be reviewing throughout this presentation. For a bit of background, in 2021, council adopted the carbon goal, committing us to an emissions reduction target of 63% reduction by 2030 and a landfill reduction goal of 70% diversion by 2050. When we look at Aspen's greenhouse gas inventory, we see that 16% of our emissions are related to the landfilling of waste. When we look at the annual waste profile, 53% of what we throw away is construction and demolition debris. Of that C&D debris that is thrown away, this chart demonstrates all of the different material types on average we see go into the landfill. Over half of these materials are locally salvageable and recoverable within this valley, so there is large potential within the construction and demolition debris to be diverted and aligned with the reduction goals for emissions and landfill reduction goals. In addition, the Aspen Sustainability Action Plan, which is also adopted by Council, lists construction and demolition diversion as a priority for the Climate Action Team to achieve in a policy. In 2021, Pickens County adopted their own construction and demolition debris ordinance that has a minimum diversion standard of 35%. Pickens County has seen a lot of success over the last 3 years with their diversion ordinance, and they have actually seen a 66% on average diversion from permitted projects. Leading up to this policy presentation here tonight, we did immense stakeholder feedback and engagement to hear from the community who would be affected by this policy. We were especially interested in hearing from those who are familiar with diversion practices already because they are doing it either voluntarily or have been working under the county's code for the last 3 years. It's been really encouraging to hear from these contractors because they are already aware of how to do diversion on site since they've been working with the county. We approached them when we asked them the specific questions that council had asked us back in May related to items such as space, time, and cost. At the first reading, we had a question come up from council regarding space and the impact to, say, the downtown core versus the west end. We see that as actually more beneficial for companies to do separation of their materials within their building square foot instead of having additional dumpsters outside the perimeter. This saves them space and costs, and then once those piles are large enough, they hire a truck to come up, have the materials filled in, and brought to the diversion or disposal facility of choice. So though there aren't great impacts when you compare the downtown core to the west end for space, there will be impacts related to the time it's going to take. What we heard is that it could be around 2 to 3 times longer to do a deconstructive salvage process versus demolition. Demolition is the act of just destroying a structure and razing it to the ground, throwing away all those materials as trash, whereas what we are proposing is the separating out of those materials for reuse and recycling. So that thoughtful process does take longer, and we heard that it could be anywhere from 2 to 3 times.
But what is the normal time for just a scrape and raise and demo?
Each building is custom and different here in Aspen, so it's hard to do an apples-to-apples, one-to-one comparison. But say if it does take about a week for a demolition, then it would take 2 to 3 weeks.
Thank you.
We also had a question at first reading from council regarding the cost differential. As I mentioned, the structures in Aspen are pretty custom, so it's hard to do a one-to-one comparison. The example we heard was that it could be an 11% increase for the salvage process compared to business as usual. This is related to the additional labor because it is taking longer to do deconstruction rather than demolition, and or the mechanics that would be required for the operation side of bringing down the structure. However, we also heard that there can be offsets in those fees, in those costs due to savings in tipping fees. A tipping fee is the price that you pay for throwing away your materials at the landfill. For construction and demolition waste that's not sorted, it is $245 per ton. If you start separating out your materials and recycling them, it's around $15 to $50 per ton. So there are offsets available for that increase upfront costs. And I will mention, I don't think I said this, but it's just for the demolition phase alone, we are seeing the time and costs increase. It's not the entire building process. On this screen is just a list of the different tactics we use to reach out to the community to learn about their interest in construction and demolition diversion. We had a survey out this summer where a majority of respondents said, yes, we are interested in seeing the city of Aspen approach a diversion code similar to the counties. I will now talk about the cost of doing nothing. So business as usual C&D practices have filled up our landfill. Though the landfill has been approved for an expansion, if we do not change behaviors, we are just going to have the same issue a few years down the road. At that time, there will be costs to the community. Once this landfill is closed, the next closest landfill is outside of this valley, and that will adjust the waste hauling costs for the individual. So the time it will take and the distance traveled for the waste trucks to go from Aspen to outside of this valley will be reflected in the servicing fees for your waste. Additionally, there are environmental costs, and this was another consideration that council discussed at first reading. When we look at lumber, lumber is an organic material, and when it is thrown away as trash, it produces methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas, stronger than carbon dioxide. 1 ton of lumber equals 2 tons of greenhouse gases emitted each year once it's buried in the landfill. For example, we also have cement, and cement is an ingredient in concrete, and concrete is a very popular building material used. Cement is responsible for 7% of global greenhouse gas emissions annually. So around the globe, 7% is related to cement. If we can start reusing the concrete we have within this valley by salvaging it, crushing it into aggregate, and then reusing it for building structures, then we can reduce the emissions related to cement. And there are opportunities within this valley for concrete recycling. Along that same line is the production of new materials. So if we are salvaging the building materials locally here, we are not increasing that demand and requesting the new materials be transported into this valley. We are in the middle of the mountains, so our building materials are coming from outside of Aspen, and we can see reductions in those transportation emissions as well. This graphic just displays the cradle to grave emission cycle for building materials. We will see reductions in the orange and red sectors, which is the extraction of raw materials, the transportations, and the manufacturing associated with the harvesting of new building materials to bring them into the city. Getting into the ordinance itself, so the Construction and Demolition Diversion Ordinance, the purpose is to prevent the permanent landfill disposal of recoverable building materials by requiring all locally salvageable materials be recycled, repurposed, or rehomed, reducing emissions and conserving landfill operations, both of which go back to Council's carbon goal and landfill reduction goal. The applicability of this policy would be to major impact projects. Those are projects that are greater than 2,000 square feet of disturbance area. This is the building square foot area plus the soil disturbance area and is calculated at permit intake. There was a question from council regarding why we weren't going after projects smaller than 2,000 square feet of disturbance area, and this is for a couple reasons. Staff found that projects of this size, of 2,000 square feet and larger, have the greatest potential for recoverable materials. Projects smaller than this are found to not have recoverable materials within this valley. So yes, they might be recyclable, but not here locally, and could increase costs for the contractor to find a home for them outside of this area. Additionally, staff review time in 2024, we assessed the projects that could have been applied to this policy, and it was around 30. We found that that was a manageable amount for one full-time staff employee to administer and enforce. There was also an additional question from council at first reading regarding why not to go after demolition triggers versus this major impact trigger. The demolition trigger means that over 40% of a structure is being altered. There are circumstances where a structure can be going over 2,000 square feet of disturbance area, but staying under that demolition trigger. So to make sure we are capturing those recoverable materials, we want to hit the major impact projects because we have the most potential to salvage materials. The diversion requirements itself is 100% diversion of all recoverable materials are required to be separated out and reused or repurposed or recycled. The recoverable materials are listed on this screen, and they are all the materials that the Pickens County Solid Waste Center can accept for recycling. We are not limiting permitted projects to only use the Solid Waste Center as their recovery facility of choice. We're just setting the standard at what we know is recyclable within this valley. At first reading, we also had a question regarding the hard-to-recycle recoverable materials. Say lumber and concrete are attached together and it's really hard to separate. That's something we would discuss in the pre-construction meeting with the contractor to learn about what materials do they anticipate to be removed from the structure and what kind of leniency can we provide so that they are not doing a lot of onerous tasks to separate, say, the adhesives and glues from the wood. This is something we would then talk with the county about and make sure that they are not penalized for an unsorted load or throwing away those materials and having them be categorized as recoverable. For enforcement and penalties, this municipal code has a list of incentives and disincentives to make sure there is compliance. The first of which is a deposit system that we copied from Pickens County as well. The deposit will be reflective of the environmental cost if all of the building structure was to be thrown away as trash. The deposit will be due at permit issuance. We really want to be focusing on training and education of the labor workforce because once the materials are in the landfill, it's too late, and the purpose of this code is to recover those materials. So we will be doing a lot of progressive enforcement and warnings and working with those contractors and laborers to make sure they are trained and aware of how to perform under this policy. However, if there is no change in their building practice and we see that they are non-compliant with this code, we have the ability to enforce a penalty fee, which we have titled the unsorted load fee. If there is an accumulation of these fees, we can then move towards a stop work order, where at that time the project cannot be doing any more work until they meet with staff and talk about their waste diversion plan moving forward. We really want to avoid these steps from happening because, as I mentioned, the materials will be in the landfill at this point and it will be too late for recovery. At first reading, we also had a question regarding the unsorted load fee and the delineation between the Pickens County's fee and our fee. An unsorted load is a container of trash mixed with recoverable materials, meaning the project did not recycle the materials that they were supposed to. Pickens County's unsorted load fee is related to their tipping fee. So any material that goes through the solid waste center has a fee attached to that category. For unsorted loads, it is $245, and this supports the operations and longevity of the landfill. The unsorted load fee in our code is just a penalty fee structure. And like all or most all municipal codes, we have a penalty fee structure within our policy to make sure that we can assign a fee to violators of our code. It's also important that staff would have a tool to enforce against those who are non-compliant because there are circumstances where a project might meet their diversion deposit minimum. So if they meet a 50% minimum diversion, then they are in line for their deposit to be returned. We don't want projects to hit that diversion deposit and then stop recycling after that. So this is another tool to make sure that they are accountable for the diversion of those recoverable materials. This table represents the differences between Pickens County's code and our proposed policy here tonight. This was provided in the memo packet, so I'm not going to go over it in detail, but I will highlight the main difference being Pickens County's ordinance requires a 35% minimum diversion, whereas the ordinance we are proposing tonight is a 50% minimum diversion. We do think this is an obtainable goal as Pickens County has seen a 66% diversion over the last 3 years on average from their permitted projects. Pickens County administers or has a full-time employee administering their program using the Green Halo software tracking, and we propose that a full-time employee would be necessary as well using Green Halo to administer this policy. I will now let Ben discuss the financial considerations for a full-time employee.
Well done.
Thank you.
Trish and I are sitting here in front of you with
clear understanding, I think, of conversations that were had with City Council during the 2025 budget process. Received very clear understanding across the organization about concerns about the addition of FTEs. And we certainly are sensitive to that and clearly understand that. But going back to the May work session, when we met with council about talking about this program at its onset and thinking about what this would mean to administer this program, we were pretty clear at that time.
Point your mic in. Thanks, man.
We were clear at that time that this is going to be a program that is going to be a very high-touch endeavor with contractors and the folks that are doing this work. That's been the experience with Pitkin County, and we know that that's going to be the case with our program, that probably will be experiencing a higher number of permits on an annual basis, depending on what's going through the county and what's going through the city. We see it as a high touch. So we want to be very transparent that should this pass, it is staff's intention to come forward at spring supplemental with a request for an FTE to administer this program. In terms of the timing of this, this ordinance, if passed, will come into effect 30 days from tonight. The kinds of projects that are going to be impacted by this and responsible to these regulations will likely come online towards the end of 25 and into 26. So we have some time to think about what this position looks like in the relationship to engineering and community development. But just know that we are going to be asking for an FTE during spring supplemental in support of this program because, again, the programs, and this was pretty clearly outlined in the memo, the two programs that I think have most touch on this in engineering and the construction management program and in community development with environmental health and sustainability and Ainsley's program are being asked to currently do a lot, and this is an add-on. And we think it's an important program. We're fully supportive of it, but it is going to require additional support from a staffing level. So we wanted to be very clear with council as you're considering this ordinance this evening that that's our intention as we go forward. Happy to answer any questions about that as you desire.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you. I'll now let council direct. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bill?
Thanks. One quick question for Ben on the FTE is what will happen when this person who's eventually hired is on vacation or is sick? Is there someone that will be cross-trained to fill in? I'm not sure how specialized the administration of the duties will be for this role. I just want to make sure that there will be continuity.
In implementing this program, we will certainly have that FTE who will be in charge of this program. However, we have a construction mitigation team that'll be cross-trained on the program itself. That's what we do for all of the programs that we administer within the construction mitigation program. It's a team approach. So even though one person will be in charge of this program, we do have a team that can support that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ainsley, I had a question about the cost of the program. On page 6 of 8 on your memo, or 68 of our packet, it says staff spoke with Stutzman Gerbaz, who estimated building removal can take 30% longer to take down in comparison to demolition. That may take 2 days. Stutzman also noted there are cost savings that negate the extra cost of labor and hauling, and this seems to be conflicting with the 2 to 3 times longer that you cited. So I'm curious, is it 30% longer offset by tipping fees, or what is the true cost?
Sure. As I mentioned, it's really hard to do a one-to-one comparison because each structure is so unique. Shea does use different machinery than other contractors might have available, so he might see an expedited deconstructive practice. So I wanted to provide you with a longer timeline and not sell it short and assume that most projects are going to hit that 30% increase. So What we heard from other general contractors is they said anywhere from 2 to 3 times longer.
Okay.
Shay is also in the audience.
I'm sorry?
Shay is also in the audience if you needed further clarification.
And the funding for this FTE would come from,
This is a general fund. I can't see any restricted fund that could provide the funding for this role.
Questions at this time?
Yeah, first question is actually this way, as far as, do we have any employees that are joint employees with the county?
No, the last time I recall that being was the chief building official was shared, and I don't even know if that was a contractual relationship. I'm looking at Trish in case she might have, no.
GIS used to be shared up until 15 years ago.
Yeah, but I think it was a contract for services rather than shared employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the CBO was the only actual shared employee that I can recall that's happened in the last 20 years that I'm aware of.
What about APSHA? Isn't APSHA theoretically shared?
No, those are employees of the city of Aspen. They have no employment, they fall all under the city of Aspen's responsibilities to administer the guidelines under the IGA.
No, this is a general point. I wanted to know that because I'm always curious, a position like this, if we can overlap with the county, reduce FTEs and get the same result sometimes. Not just this role, but a bunch of roles. I mean, we're using the Green Halo system. I understand the need for this, but I do feel like, to Bill's point of just like if someone's sick or on vacation, it almost feels like, could the county employees step in? And obviously, we're very much two different entities, but just one example of, I do think there's a lot of redundancy between the city and the county on very similar things.
Sure, so like in the case of this, that was one of the objectives, was to provide as much assimilation to assist the contracting world of not having two sets of rules based on borders. The process of support, if for some reason we are unable to provide that support within our own staff, we have a great relationship with Pickens County to help us work that through in a short-term basis, and if we needed to make arrangements more on a long-term basis. I'll give you an example. We do this for inspectors right now, particularly electrical inspectors in the valley, that we can provide some backup to one another, specifically for these examples of vacation. If it's a very urgent permit that we were overwhelmed with the request for that service during a scheduled leave period. So I think behind the scenes, we can continue to work on that for sure.
Yeah, as a general sense, if there's redundancy with the county, it'd be nice to reduce FTEs and take advantage of that.
Yeah, the challenge is that the workload, regardless of whether we shared employees or not, the workload of the two programs together is 2 FTEs. That's what we've heard pretty clearly from our friends over
I
at
want
the
you to know, I
county.
understand that.
Yeah.
I was just saying it as a curiosity and a general point, just because there is redundancy. But yeah, other than that, thank you. You did a really good job of answering all the questions we had from the first regular meeting. I really appreciate that. I don't have any others because of it.
Great.
Bill?
Thanks. I am, after a lot of contemplation, I'm supportive of this effort. I do think it's the responsible thing to do. I think we're going to administer it reasonably, but I do think that we should wait to implement this until we resolve the demolition allotment program changes or elimination. I really think that they're tied together to one another. There's been expressions at the table by at least one member of council, if not more, that perhaps this initiative, the C&D debris diversion, could be a replacement for the demo allotment program. So I would propose that we pause on implementing this tonight and wait until progress has been made on the demo allotment program. Thanks.
John?
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. Thanks for all your hard work. Great presentation, and I'll be supporting this moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, John. This is a public hearing for ordinance number 21, adoption of chapter 29.02, construction demolition debris diversion. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak this evening on ordinance number 21? Please come on up.
Right on.
All right, I got a green light. Hi, I'm Kathy Hall. I'm the Solid Waste Director for Pitkin County. And I'm here tonight to provide support for adoption of this ordinance. So we fully support it and City of Aspen's efforts to implement a construction and demolition debris ordinance aimed at reducing waste and increasing material diversion and promoting sustainable building practices. So the ordinance does closely align with Pitkin County's ongoing commitment to responsible waste management and environmental stewardship. So in 2024, construction and demolition waste accounted for about 52%. So it is coming down and the program's working. Materials deposited in our landfill, continue just trashing, construction, tearing down buildings. It's going to really rapidly accelerate the filling of the landfill. And we all know how critical that is. And by just throwing this stuff in to the limited landfill space, you're contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions. And it represents a lost opportunity to recover valuable materials. So the City of Aspen's ordinance will not only extend the landfill's lifespan, but also support our overarching goals of waste diversion and resource conservation. So the county looks forward to continuing to work closely with the City of Aspen to provide outreach and education and any technical support where we can. So we'll continue that. And we're here for you. So it is working. So, yeah.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this. Also, thank you for the work that you do. Last year, I had an opportunity to do some electronics recycling, took me out to the landfill. And I just want to give you public commendation for this because people don't understand what I think what the end of these materials is, and the efforts that you guys are putting into sustainability and reuse and the like is just fantastic. So I just want to thank you for all the work that you do and how you represent us.
No, thank you for that, yeah.
John?
Yeah, I also want to thank you, Kathy. I think our Pitkin County landfill is probably one of the best in the country. I am psyched every time I go out there. It seems like there's something new and better. So thanks for your hard work.
Thank you.
I'll echo that support, and Mother Lode is good as well.
Big things to come. So we are planning new facilities, expansion of all that. So it'll be good. A couple years, you're going to see some big changes.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Other members of the public for public comment this evening on ordinance number 21?
Shay Stutzman with Stutzman Gerboz Earth Moving. Okay, sorry, Shay Stutzman with Stutzman Gerboz Earth Moving. This year marks 65 years of our company owning business and supporting the Aspen and Roaring Fork Valley. We are very supportive, and great thanks to Ainsley, City of Aspen, Pitkin County, Kathy, for their work on what they've done with this program. And I feel like we as contractors owe it to the community to do a better job with recycling. And I think this is just the start for where we can go and what we can do. So I strongly encourage the City of Aspen to accept and adopt this ordinance.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your participation in this entire process. I know that you were somebody that staff felt very comfortable to go to get some recommendations and some input. So thank you for participating.
Absolutely, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Shay.
Other members of the public for public comment this evening? This is ordinance number 21, construction and demolition debris diversion.
Good evening. Sam Barney, citizen of Aspen. I also work for a contractor. I do a lot of permitting, and it just would be helpful if it were exactly the same as Pitkin County's.
Is there one or two items that you're talking about specifically?
Well, specifically, greater than 2,000 square feet. I like what Pitkin County does with determining it by staff. 50% diversion, while I support the program, I'd like to see it be the same as the county to start with and bumped up over time. And then the fee loads, the deposits, deposit return, exactly the same as well. Just would be much easier for everyone who's already been trained on Pitkin County to immediately adopt the city's program and to push this forward. I think it's important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sam? Other members of the public for public comment this evening on ordinance number 21? I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council table then. Let's follow up just on that last commenter. The differences between the city and the county program. Was consideration given to an identical program and?
Sure. Yes, it was. So for the applicability, as I mentioned, we went for major impact projects. We felt it was necessary to have a threshold which we designated applicable to this policy rather than having it be the interpretation of internal staff, so we could avoid any legality issues with projects that are similar, and we decided to do diversion for one and not for the other. For the penalty fees, for the unsorted load fee, we had a study done. Instead of just selecting a number for the penalty, we had an environmental cost study done to see what is the damages that would be done to the environment for throwing with those building materials, and that's how we came up with our costs that are associated with the unsorted load fee and the deposit fee. For the minimum diversion, as I mentioned, Pitkin County has seen an over 60% diversion success rate on average, and Pitkin County's is at 35%. They started their policy at 25%, and I know they are looking to increase their diversion percentage as well. So we just wanted to go at 50% diversion because we have seen that it is achievable through the last 3 years of their averages. And I think that was, most of the differences that he mentioned.
Thank you very much. Other council questions?
Final comments?
Sure, now or during discussion?
Yeah, discussion.
Yeah, just quickly, the 495 is the environmental costs, and that was from the EPA and the consultant.
Yes, we had a consultant do that study based off the EPA's metrics for greenhouse gases associated with the average C&D material thrown away in the landfill annually. And that's how that fee was determined.
When I first started reading the memo, I'm going, where did they get that? Now I know.
Yeah.
Question. How many demo permit applications have we received this calendar year?
25 or 24? In total,
And wait, I just thought you said that we got 24 or 25 demo permit applications.
2024, 2025.
2025.
I think that so far we have issued one pre-app and have received 2 applications for 2025 demo allotments that have been issued. So to say that another way, we have issued all of 25s. And we've received 3 additional demolition allotment inquiries formally, either through pre-application or submission of an application since the beginning of the year.
Thank you. I will use this opportunity to answer some of the questions that came up about my support for this C&D diversion as it relates to the demo permit program, not related to this, but related for some. I am in favor of modifications to the program. I'm not ready to get rid of it, but I believe we are going to have that information coming back to us from community development over the next few months. So I don't know if I don't know if council would be wanting to pursue changes at this time. Or wait for a new seated council in April to avoid any reversals, redundancy, or anything like that. But as I said, where I stand is that the local allotments, I think, should be a greater allotment for the locals demo permit, potentially unlimited. I really don't think that we need to be holding people up that have been in their homes and there for 30 years, 25 years even. So I am in favor of some changes, but I don't know if this council wants to bring that forward now or later. For the reasons of this evening, I will be supporting this moving forward. But that is where I stand on this, is that, yes, I do think that there should be amendment made to it, but I'm not ready to do away with the program until I see how this is working a little bit. John, comments?
Yeah, I also am not ready to discontinue the demo permit program. To the best of my knowledge, every long-term local that asked for a demo permit has received one. And I think it's actually helping achieve the goals we set out to achieve several years ago. In the future, maybe the diversion program is working so well we can discontinue the demo permit program, but for the time being, I'm happy to keep it the way it is. And as Tori just pointed out, there will be a new council in the next couple months.
All right. Thank you. Ward?
Yeah, I also support having this take effect upon 30 days after passage of the second reading. I don't want to hold up enforcement of it for future discussion on the demo permit allotment system. I think perhaps that changes can be made. The more locals that demolish and move down valley or out of state, the more we lose the fabric of our community. So I do support continuing discussion on it, and maybe we have some discussions, or a future council has discussions about how long a person has to be living in their property before they get a local demo permit. So I will be supporting this as is presented this evening.
Discussion? Or you finished with public comment?
We're done with public comment. We're going to take a motion and then have further discussion. Or you can make comments now.
Oh, I'll make some comments. God, I hate talking about the demo permit system because it feels like beating a dead horse, and I always feel like, yeah, not fun.
Shouldn't beat a dead horse, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be supporting this tonight as much as I want to get rid of the demo permit allotment system. Pragmatically, I know there's not 3 votes to do that, and I very much support this program. I feel really good about this program. I'm proud to support it. But I just do want to comment on the demo permit system. To me, if the goal was to get sued and to have locals suffer needlessly, then it's working. If the goal is to impede the progress of energy efficient homes, then it's working. It kind of just drives me nuts. I understand the goals. I understand the whereas clauses. I just think it's been a mess since the get-go, unfortunately. But I understand the good intentions. And lastly, when it comes to this program that I will be supporting tonight, I don't know what I don't know. I expect to potentially have to reform it at one point in time, but I do feel very good about what I do know, and I'm very thankful to staff about what you've presented and how I expect this to go. But I just want to be said on the record that things can go awry with this, and I will personally adapt when it does or if it does. Hopefully it goes well, but hope is not a good strategy, and we'll see how it does, but I expect really good things. And that is all.
Thanks, Tim.
Is this 21?
21.
I move we adopt
Ordinance.
Ordinance 21, Series 2024, 2025 now.
Because it started in 24? So
Started in 24.
So seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Bill?
Only further discussion is that, again, I'm supportive of this effort, but I do believe that it should be done in concert with changes to the demo allotment program. And as such, I will not be supporting it tonight, but not because I'm not supportive of the initiative, only because I feel principled about that happening in tandem. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Any other further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote for ordinance number 21, please?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
And no, sorry.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. Ordinance 21 passes by a 4-1 vote. Thank you guys very
Thank you
much.
so much.
And Ainsley, you did a great job of that presentation.
Well, have a
Thank you.
good night.
It's in my notes.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Trish.
Thanks, Ben.
Our next item for public hearing this evening is resolution number 5. This is amendments to the land use code.
The chair's too tall for me.
Wow. Everybody's leaving?
That's the construction and demolition debris.
Let's recycle a lot of that.
Let's recycle a lot of that.
Good evening, Mayor Tory and City Council. I've got a quick slideshow to present, if that works for you
Sounds
all.
great.
Let's see. Forget. Huh. I don't know why it's not doing it in the full mode here. There we go. All right. Sorry. All right. In front of you tonight is Policy Resolution 5, Series of 2025. This is a policy resolution to formally open the land use code for 2 amendments. Again, you all are very well aware this is the first step in initiating land use code amendments. And in front of you tonight are 2 different amendments that are proposed. The first is a response to Prop 122, which City Council had initiated staff to work on amending due to a work session in November. And second is the initiation by the Planning and Zoning Commission to formally change their meeting date, which is codified within Title 26. So we have to go through the land use amendment process for that as well. And I have Louisa, who is here to answer any legal questions that you might have in response to Proposition 122. Again, this is just the sort of formal process to open the land use code. We anticipate having a more robust conversation at first reading, which will be, I believe, later this month. But what we have anticipated for edits at this time is to include the natural medicine business as an office use category within our use category section in Title 26. And then we're proposing definitions verbatim from the legislation for those 3 items on the last line there: natural medicine product, natural medicine business. In your packet was also a proposed GIS map that is showing that 1,000-foot buffer from any sort of school or daycare facilities, as well as the highlighted zone districts that are allowed by right through the office use category. Are there any questions in regards to the policy resolution for Prop 122?
Are we limiting this to a discussion of definition and location of business practices?
Yes.
We are limited to what can be regulated is the location of natural medicine businesses, and that is all.
Yep.
It's a time, place, and manner regulation.
Yeah, thanks.
Other questions?
Okay. And again, we'll come for first reading. We can have a more robust conversation about the exact amendments that are proposed. The second amendment that is proposed within this policy resolution is the P&Z meeting date change. So currently, P&Z meets on the 1st and 3rd Tuesday of the month. This is a conflicting schedule. Just with access to a room that works for them. They'd really like to move their meetings into council chambers, especially around the election cycle. So we've just sort of we've been sort of shifting a lot of the P&Z meetings. So this was something that they asked staff to initiate as well, which is by right per section 26.310.020A2. the P&Z may initiate that amendment. So that is the sole change for this proposed amendment. And again, we can have a more robust conversation. But we did already take this to a resolution in front of P&Z last week, which was approved. So, yep. Great. Okay. Staff recommends council approve resolution 005, series of 2025. Again, this is just the formal policy resolution to open the land use code for these two amendments.
Thank you very much. Any other questions at this time? Motion. This is a public hearing on resolution number 5, series 2025, amendments to the land use code. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on resolution number 5, which is a policy resolution? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council table. Any further questions?
I'll make a motion to pass resolution number 5, series of 2025.
I'll second.
Motion by Sam, second by Bill. Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote, please, for resolution number 5?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Havenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks, Haley.
Mr. Mayor, the next item involves the boat tow. You and I are conflicted, and we will be stepping out.
For the public and council's information, this is the boat tow temporary airlock application, and I am living within 300 feet of the property, so I will be recused from this item. John will preside.
Hear ye, hear ye.
Would you like us to step up to the table?
Yeah, please, if you like. Yeah.
Hello.
Howdy.
Hi.
How are we doing?
Thanks, how are you?
Good. My name is Liz Enriquez. I'm the community manager for Gravity House, in which entails a public concept, the boat tow, in which I've had the joy of opening to the public as a affordable, approachable community restaurant bar. And just for hindsight, for all of you, boat tow has, it's one of the oldest ways of getting up Ajax Mountain. It is kind of an homage to this town, Aspen, and the mountain. And the reason why we're here tonight is the airlock and just creating a more warm and welcoming space for the community, the local community members, and all of our lovely visiting tourists. So I have Grady with me, Grady Huff.
My name is Grady Huff. I'm a owner's rep for Gravity House, purveyor of boat tow. And like Liz mentioned, we are seeking a solution for a problem that we have for comfort and access to the building during short-term periods from January to early March. Basically cold season. Building is built in 1976 and precludes us from a few items related to architectural solutions, and thus we are proposing the airlock component. And I believe Ben is going to present the case and then open for questions.
Yeah. Sorry, my computer just died and is a black screen. What's that?
Do you need the documents?
No, I'm good. For the record, Ben Anderson, Community Development Director. Also a patron of the boat tow. I think they're a great restaurant. This is a difficult case for staff. We certainly understand the desire for this proposed airlock. It's just over 70 square feet of proposed space in a temporary enclosure that attaches to the kind of south facade and the door that's on the south facade of the building. Certainly understand during the winter time the desire for this kind of buffer between the outside and the interior space, particularly in a small restaurant. There was a flurry of activity on these external airlocks temporarily during the winter in the late 90s and 2000s. The previous tenant of this space had an airlock. Since the approval of those those airlock spaces in the late 90s and 2000s. I think because of the number of them that were requested, the community started to put regulations in place for them and ultimately prohibited them. The most recent commercial design guidelines, which were updated in 2017, has very clear language that was in your memo that prohibits these. And the reasons for those is that, or the reason for that prohibition, as I understand the community discussion around them, was that there was concerns about potential impacts to the right-of-way, potential impacts to additional massing on buildings that wasn't intended when the buildings were designed. And then, you know, kind of just additionally, the kind of addition, for the same reason we have concerns about tents and other temporary structures, just the materiality of these features. That's not to say that they're not useful additions to a building. It's just that there's a very clear prohibition in the code against these per previous community discussions about them. So while staff certainly understands the need for these, the language in the code, particularly the commercial design guidelines, are very clear. And staff has been in a regular pattern of recommending denial when there have been requests for these. And you know, we get several requests per year for these in one way, shape, or another. And we're in a position of needing to deny or recommending denial of these kinds of proposals. So should council agree that this is an addition to the building that can be supported, the resolution is written in the affirmative under a temporary use approval, similar to what council has been asked to do for tent structures. There is a growth management component to this for the additional square footage on an annual basis that is consistent with the way that you've considered tents previously. It's the same type of approval that would be granted to the tents. The difference with this is that there's a very clear prohibition on these types of structures within the commercial design guidelines. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Sam?
For the applicants, not for Ben. I don't know if you guys have a presentation as well, though, so, or is that it? Oh, all right.
We have a presentation that was submitted for the planning documents.
So my questions are, is your airlock in the right-of-way?
No.
Is your airlock, it's in addition to the mast, but it's a small one, and off the right-of-way. Is it seen? It's facing the street, though, or?
It's in our patio space, our 200 square foot patio space on the, well, basically it's our front door.
Yeah.
We don't really have a front door to this facility, but it'd be the far left door on the face of the street.
I feel like the previous design of it, when I went there, I went in a different entrance. Is that no longer there?
There is a side door that is our second exit and utilitarian access to the kitchen.
It is, okay.
It's basically our exiting for the project, our interior space seating.
Okay.
All of 600 square feet.
And then maybe most importantly, without this airlock, every time that door opens, the people sitting near it are now getting a nice cold breeze. And your heating bill is now going to be higher because of the cold that comes in.
Yeah, I did want to add that the solution here is not to create a larger space to access the facility. We really have a significant problem with the energy that's being sucked out of the building every time the door opens from December to March. And that being said, it creates a comfort zone and a gigantic energy loss. And with that, we also have investigated multiple options, air curtains and other ways to reduce the amount of heat loss in the space. Unfortunately, due to the building's construction, we don't even have that ability to apply it above the door. So that precluded that direction. Thus, we went in this direction to see if it could be applicable, seeing that it's not in the right-of-way.
Understood. So I just want to comment that I appreciate this policy. but a lot of times it's hard to create policy with the nuance involved. I appreciate you guys bringing it to us. We are 4 human beings who can sympathize, rationalize, and hopefully make the right decision. And for that reason, I'll be voting to approve this resolution because it's not a hindrance. It's not causing a problem that this policy was designed to prevent. It's really just doing the right thing, in my opinion. It's hurting no one. It's helping you guys and every patron that goes in there, and it's helping, to be blunt, the environment by not raising your heating bill and being more energy intensive.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bill, you have your hand up?
Thanks, John. 2 parts to my question, one for the applicants and one for Ben. Hi, Liz and Grady. Part 1 is can you describe the materiality of the proposed airlock structure?
I can. It is a sunbrella material that you would see on umbrellas or professional sailing boats. It's an outdoor weathered product that's made for these types of conditions. You see vestibules quite a bit in urban fabric settings to do this type of application, so it's not an uncommon product, but it's a canvas material with a waterproofing application to it.
Great, and then like a metal frame door with a plexiglass or a flexible plastic window, is that?
We can make it as transparent as possible. We are proposing a clear opening door, so it's a window within the door and then a window in the street-facing view of it. The alley facing is not really exposed to public, so I'm not sure it needs to be transparent.
Okay, and is it like a solid door, or is this sort of like flimsy?
No, yeah, I can answer your
Kind
question.
of canvas material with just a thin metal frame.
Yeah, it has to meet code for fire exiting, so it's an aluminum frame door with the canvas with a breakaway closure hardware system.
Like a push egress bar.
Push
Is that what you're
egress
talking
bar.
about?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
got it.
And it's
All right, and thank you. Part 2 of my question, Ben, is I definitely echo all of Sam's sentiment. I want to support this. I understand the need for it. I think it's reasonable, but I am concerned about the quality of materials on structures like this. And that's not an accusation of these applicants specifically, but you know, in a lot of cities you go around, there's sort of like older tent things that are being used long past their useful life, et cetera. And if they were in good repair and in nice shape, they wouldn't be so unattractive. I think Aspen sort of self-regulates for some of that, but I want to be smart. And so the question, Ben, is can we hold the quality of the materials to a certain standard? Can we make sure that these are attractive and well-maintained?
You know, I think consistent with the comments that were just made, I think what's being proposed is a fairly common application for these in a dark color. You know, I think that they're pretty visually unobtrusive. You know, but I will say the materiality question about this, from my understanding of the regulation against these things, that was one of the primary concerns when the community decided to start precluding these from regular use across the downtown core. So yeah, certainly we will, you know, ensure that if approved, that these things continue to look nice. Certainly every time this goes up, much like a tent, it goes through building and fire inspection to make sure that egress is being achieved and access is being achieved through this door. So yeah, I don't have any concerns about it being what it is.
Okay, great. I think, you know, the last thing I want to see is that sort of white plasticky tent material on structures like this, that, you know, temporary event type of tents, I think would be quite unattractive. So I'm fine with what the applicants proposed. Thanks for all the information.
Ward. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, could you compare and contrast what you're planning here with the airlock at the sun deck?
I could, but honestly, I can't, I don't know the airlock at the sun deck. So
It's a similar material, probably a different color, but similar materials with, the capacity to have a rigid door as necessary. You're talking about on the primary entrance into the sun deck.
Yeah, both on the front door and on the back door to
Yeah.
the sun deck.
I think a similar material, similar kind of door, in interaction with the aluminum door frame. I think a pretty similar structure, light and materiality probably pretty similar. But from what I understand, their proposal is this is a dark gray or a black.
now I recall that we do have a more robust framework that we're proposing for the structure. It's just a thicker framework, so it can be disassembled and reassembled. Because it is just a temporary structure and taken down, we designed it to be a better structure to hold the canvas itself.
And
the doorway has been mentioned.
Ben, this reminds me, I think we have before us something similar to this enclosure for the Molly.
I think specifically it was for Limelight a couple years ago, I believe. They were wanting to enclose the alcove with a similar structure, again, to provide that buffer. Council's decision on that request was to give them a year to try it out and see if they could either make that work or how it looked or come up with an alternative. It was kind of a short-term response to some concerns that they had. They ended up not doing that, but that was the last request at the Limelight, if I'm thinking correctly.
Darn, I thought that was the Molly upstairs.
We did have a conversation about on the Molly about a more typical tent enclosure. But in terms of airlocks, the last one of these that I know came to council was the request from the Limelight.
And my recollection on the Molly was that I thought council approved that contrary to staff's recommendation.
I think staff on all of these questions oftentimes finds themselves in a difficult position. Certainly, we understand the desire for whether it be these airlocks or whether they be for the tents. I think there was a time in this community when there was a lot of concern about the proliferation of uses, whether it be for an airlock or whether it be for tents. And so we wrote in a lot of requirements around this preclusion on this being one of those, but there's also very clear statements about materiality, wanting things to be more permanently constructed rather than encouraging additional temporary uses. It seems that the sentimentality around that is changing, and so staff would probably welcome a conversation with council about the things that we use to evaluate these proposals.
And the color that you would choose, I would hope, would be as compatible and harmonious with the exterior of that building.
It is a black fabric, and it is exactly the same color as the exterior of the building. That it's not the brick color, but it's the black trim work of the framework of the doors and the doors themselves.
And
Limousine black to be
is this
specific.
a product that you've already purchased?
We have not purchased anything to date.
Okay. So I'm just curious for a topic of discussion, if that black is acceptable to the other members of council, or if we feel that it should be something closer to the brick. And I hate to get into minutia of a color of a fabric, but, and I think that I'd like to have this council revisit some of those decisions that were made previously. I think the airlock is probably a good thing environmentally, and to reevaluate what the intent was back when it was precluded.
Mayor Pro Tem, real quick, before we go further, I'd really encourage you to, address other questions and open the public hearing before council gets into discussion. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I guess I will open it up for public comment. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience or online who'd like to make a comment? Seeing none, I will bring it back to council table. I haven't really made any comments yet. One question I had for Ben was, and you gave me one example, was examples of denial. Limelight was one. Can you remember any others?
Oftentimes, it doesn't get that far in terms of showing up in front of city council. We have lots of requests for these in different circumstances and different applications. I think the things that have come to you most frequently are the expansion of seating areas onto patio spaces with perhaps different scaled enclosures, but enclosures of similar materials that staff's position on are often very similar to this around the materiality of those structures. And so I'm trying to think of one where we've come in recommending approval. I can't think of one since I've been with the city because of the clear statements in the commercial design guidelines around materiality. But I do understand this request to be somewhat different, but I will say that the commercial design guides specifically prohibit these structures. I understand certainly the desire for them, but the code, when it was crafted, gave specific direction to that.
Understood, thanks. All right, back to discussion.
Yeah, the temporary tent structures and temporary uses had a mitigation calculation. Does this have that?
It does, and it has been included within the resolution as drafted.
Sam?
You ready for a motion, or are you asking about the black color? Where are we
Asking
at?
if there's any more discussion.
No, I'm good unless you want to talk about the black color, but.
Well, I was curious how the rest of council feels about that, yeah.
I personally, I'm okay with the color that they come up with. I don't think we need to get into that here at this table.
Yeah, same, I'm not fashionable, but black usually goes with everything.
Valid.
Make a motion.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 007, Series of 2025.
Second.
All right, we'll take a roll call vote.
Further discussion.
Further discussion.
Yeah, I'm reluctant to approve something as specifically prohibited in the code. And this is a land use code, would be the same process that we did for the last two items, 005, that we'd have to open it up, have a first and second reading be public, to make a change in the land use code.
I will say this has got a little bit of nuance to it. The commercial design guidelines are one of the documents that sit outside the land use code. It's required for conformance within the land use code, but the document itself is a standalone document that council can sort of approve by resolution, as I believe so. And so, I think that there is space to sort of change this, and I think there's a series of these topics. I can't point to one commercial design guidelines that if council wants to be over time more tolerant of these types of requests, there's a whole series of things that were kind of intentionally created to discourage these sort of temporary use requests. Should council desire to change that, there's some pieces within the land use code that probably would likely require a code change, and there's some things in the commercial design guidelines. This specific preclusion is in the commercial design guidelines. That could be done by resolution.
So to be clear, Ben, you're saying that we could do a resolution to change the commercial design guidelines to allow this as a use that does not have to go through a land use process?
I believe it's limited to a resolution, so it'd be a one-step action, probably an action item, agenda item, should you desire to do that. Regarding, the request as a temporary use, again, it gets a little bit nuanced about where the regulations are located, whether in the commercial design guidelines or in the land use code. Anything in the land use code that would be necessary, I don't think to allow an airlock, the preclusion lives specifically in the commercial design guidelines, would require a change to that document, and is a little bit less rigorous of an amendment process.
So trying to find a way to allow this without violating the commercial design guidelines. Would this be allowable as a temporary use for say, a month until we could have a resolution to change the commercial design guideline?
I think if council was desirous of something like, I think that we could, and this was I'm hesitant to bring up another example because it was a slightly different conversation, but I do think on the council ultimately approved the request from the Limelight, but limited it to a period of time. That could be a condition of approval for this, that rather it be a temporary use that's typically granted a 5-year, 10-year sort of lifespan, you could limit the sort of amount of time. Or you could, I think there's several ways to approach that, but I do think you could, as a condition of approval, limit the number of years of approval to give space to a change to the commercial design guidelines in support of these kinds of requests.
May I add to that? Our understanding that it is a revocable application. So it's dependent on year to year, each year that it's approved, and it only has 127 days of application from December 15th to April 15th.
And a temporary use is 14 days?
The one that I have authority to approve is up to 14 days. After that, these requests come to city council.
So administratively, you could approve this for 14 days?
Yes. However, I would struggle to do that because of the commercial design guideline that is present, whether it's your review or ComDev's review, that limitation still applies.
I'm really cautious about approving something that is prohibited. I prefer to, by resolution, change the commercial design guideline, give temporary use for this, and then say it could even be the next meeting where a resolution comes to change just that one section of commercial design guideline. Do you think that's reasonable? In the next couple of meetings?
We could probably turn that around in a month or so.
Would, Sam, were you the one that moved this?
I made the motion, Bill seconded.
Okay. Would you accept temporary approval and then to allow for a permanent solution through a resolution and to change the commercial design guideline to allow for an interlock?
Temporary.
Mayor Pro Tem, I think it has to be for a set, I would suggest it be for time. So the way your resolution is written, the motion on the floor, is to adopt a resolution that allows them to rely on for 5 years. Out of each calendar year, they get to put the airlock up for 127 days. Instead of sort of trying to guess when a land use amendment could come through, I would propose that if you're requesting a friendly amendment, that it be to limit the 5-year period to a period of 1 or 2 years, in the thought that that gives staff plenty of time to do that. Now, I will note, these applicants are subject, as you have all pointed out tonight, to a new council that's coming in. So, the ability and the willingness to sort of change this is somewhat speculative at this point.
Guaranteed.
So, right now, again, the term is for 5 years. You certainly have the power to limit that to 1 or 2 years, and then make them come back to you in the hopes that, and they will have that hope that they won't be subject to it anymore, which would not require them to come back. But there's no guarantee that that will happen. And I don't think it would be appropriate to speak on whether or not you would approve such an amendment without actually seeing it at this point.
And what is your time frame on ordering this product and installing it? When would we see it in front of the boat tow?
We're 3 weeks away. Once we push the go button with the fabricator, we're 3 weeks out for installation. Possibly 2 if we expedite it, but we really want it this weekend, by the way.
Well, that's
sorry to make light of it, but it's about to get really cold.
Yeah.
But we're 2 weeks away to 3.
Okay, I support this idea, but I can't support this as it is presented now. I would like to see it a conforming use instead of a non-conforming.
Mm-hmm.
So I support this, but I'd like to see change in the rules so it's allowed use?
My comments, I sat in a restaurant recently next to an airlock. But I do believe in airlocks, and I think that, you know, I'm all about energy conservation. So it is troubling to me that this is against our current downtown guidelines, but at the same time, things change, and maybe it's time that we do revisit this airlock issue. I could see amending the motion so that we grant this for 1 year and then have a work session and look at this situation and go forward from there. Anybody?
That's Sam's motion.
I mean,
The friendly amendment.
is that the only way you'd support it? Because it's going to be 2-2 otherwise.
No, I understand math. No, it's not the only way I'll support this. I really think this is a pretty simple request. It does trouble me because it's against our downtown guidelines, but
Sam, I understand that too, so I think I'm not going to support this just because it is non-conforming, but I would like to see the change to the design guideline to make this a conforming use.
Yeah, I think we can do that afterwards, but I think tonight we can support this, especially for the environment.
all right, I'll accept the motion as stated. Can we have a roll call vote?
Counselor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth,
Yes.
Counselor Hohenstein,
No.
Counselor Rose.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate the time.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, cheers. And
Like, could we get support from council to, for a resolution to amend the design guidelines, commercial design?
I will say, one of the hesitations that staff has about wading into this topic is that the code around it is pretty complex. And it would be really easy fix to say, hey, we're going to allow airlocks. That would be it would be taking away a couple words. But I don't know that that's where I think the community would like to go in terms of limiting them in size, limiting some design elements of them to respond to some of the concerns that council had. So I do think that broadly, this fits into a much larger discussion around temporary enclosures that staff would be very interested in having a discussion with council about that, either with this council or with a future council. But there's a bunch of intertwined sections, both in the land use code and the commercial design guidelines that fit together in some pretty nuanced ways. And to respond, I think, to the issues that council would like us to respond to is a little bit of a delicate set of code amendments to make sure that we're not opening this up to carte blanche in a way that the community wouldn't intend us to do.
And like a death of a thousand cuts?
Yeah, I think the best, perhaps, way forward is if there's, you know, a motion from supported by at least three of you to set that work session, just giving the prep it's going to take for it. It will be with the new council, so we'll, as typical, when a turnover in council, we will verify with that new council that this is still an appropriate agenda item. But we can go ahead and we would somewhat eagerly entertain that work session to help us make things easier for customers and our applicants, essentially.
In honoring the pending election, I would leave it to Sam or Bill to make that motion, and I'll bow out at this point.
Are you talking about enclosures, patio enclosures?
Yeah, as we just discussed, there's a clear intersection of the request that the BOTO just made with, I mean, it was the same approval process as council considers around tent applications. A lot of intersection of the same codes. Temporary structures, temporary uses. And so there are some very sort of scalpel responses that we could make regarding airlocks. But I think it's part of a larger conversation I think that staff would be eager to have around temporary enclosures generally with council.
Well, I'm in favor of that conversation. I've advocated for a while for some different places to be able to drop the sides on some of their enclosed patio spaces. I think a great example right now is Jing. Jing went through the patio review, so they put a small roof structure out there, and then they were able to drop the sides on it for 2 weeks because that's all you're allowed. But for me, places like that, you know, heck, even the Wheeler, boy, the restaurant at the Wheeler, man, the door opens. I mean, it's going to be negative 10 degrees next week. The front door opens and it freezes out everybody in there. I'm really supportive of figuring out some new code language that works with the community. So I would support that work session.
Yeah, I'll take a work session on it. I'll take a work session on it, but actually, never mind. I'll just take a work session. I don't want to say whatever.
I'm supportive too.
Hit us with a work session.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right.
I just realized that it's sunny out where Bill is.
I know, I noticed that too.
That's the different direction.
It's 9:21 already.
Yep. All right,
It's also tomorrow.
how's it looking?
Yeah, how's tomorrow gonna be?
What are the stocks like?
Pretty good.
Where are we then? We're coming down to, back to our agenda. We are down to action items. This is resolution number 2, series of 2025, GMQS allotment carry forward.
Yes, Mayor Tory, City Council, I've got another hopefully quick presentation for you. See if I can figure out how to do this. All right. So Resolution 2, Series of 2025, this is the annual GMQS allotment carry forward. You may recall Amy Simon did this presentation last year. It happens annually at the first or second meeting of the year. And this is just per section 26470120, which is within GMQS. It prescribes exactly how staff should bring the yearly allotments within GMQS to City Council to either carry forward into the new year or to sort of extinguish and leave in the previous year. So this is how we create our total development allotments. So we have the standard annual allotments, which I'll go through the chart of what we have available this year, plus any sort of discretionary allotments from the previous year that will equal what will be available for 2025. So right now, as you may recall, the House Bill 1255 response eliminated our residential free market allotments. So that is eliminated for this year and, you know, moving forward. Commercial, which is measured in net leasable square footage, there's 33,300 square feet. We do not count the affordable housing allotments. There isn't like an allotment that we give out, but we do count them, I guess, year to year to see what the growth is. And then lodging is the other annual allotment, and that is counted through pillows. So 112 additional pillows every year is what we have available for lodging growth. Similar to affordable housing, we keep track of essential public facility, which is in square footage. And then, of course, we have our demolition and local demolition allotments, which are 6 and 2 respectively. So the 2024 allotments, you can see what was used, and within your packet was a chart that I actually have in the slide deck that gives the full breakdown. We had 3 new residential free market allotments, 0 commercial net leasable square footage. We had 25 new residential affordable housing units come online, 0 lodging pillows, and then 15,263 square feet of essential public facility. We gave out 10 demolition allotments and 35 year longtime local demolition allotments. So I just wanted to sort of pull that out because I had a feeling that this would be a topic of conversation. So for the demolition allotments that were given out in 2024, we had 4 that were available for longtime locals. You may recall you carried 2 forward that were unused from 2023. So we had the 4 35-plus year longtime local demolition allotments. We gave 2 last month, which were 2025 longtime locals. We did that through resolutions 142 and 143. We had 4 regular demolition allotments that were done through the lottery process. And then we gave 6 of the 2025 demolition allotments through the settlement agreement through resolution number 62. So we gave 16 demolition allotments in 2024. So this was the chart. Oops, sorry, that doesn't look as good on the screen. This is the chart that was in your packet that just breaks down where the allotments are given. So this is just a routine process that staff does every year at the end, just seeing who gave out GMQS allotments. This is done through a land use process and entitlement work. You can see the top ones that are in the gray bar. Those are the longtime locals, the demolition allotments. The peach are the regular demolition allotments. We had 10 affordable housing project units come online through the 205 West Main Street approval. I don't need to go through all these. And then 11 through the Aspen Hills approval. I just wanted to highlight those because those are pretty significant affordable housing units coming online. And then the 15,000 square feet was through the Burlingame Early Childhood Education Center, just as a breakdown for where these allotments came from. So what we're looking at for tonight and what this resolution specifically is allowing council to do is look at what the remaining allotments are and if we want to carry those forward into 2025. So what we have available to carry forward through this resolution is the 300 square feet of commercial space and the 112 lodging pillows. So that is what is available to carry forward through this resolution. And with any sort of, land use approvals, there is a review criteria. So if you do choose to carry forward any of these 2 leftover allotments from 2024, there was an exhibit in the packet that went through the review criteria. But for this reason, staff recommends that we do not carry forward any of the unused 2024 growth management allotments. There is a 2% growth rate, which is codified in growth management, and we feel that there is no need to carry forward these allotments year to year. As we sort of discussed in the House bill presentation, a lot of these do go unused, and we feel that the 2% growth rate that is within growth management for 2025 is sufficient.
Thank you. Bill, questions?
Yes, thanks. Haley, are the Lift One lodges, I forget the name of the second one, but both of those up on the Lift 1A side, are those both sorted in terms of their lodging GMQS allotments?
Yes. The specifics of that, Councilmember Guth, are that the allotments are counted in the year that the land use approvals are granted. In the case of Lift One Lodge, those came from I think a 2011 approval, and it was one of the conditions when they went through their process of being able to keep those allotments. There was a request for the Gorsuch House, now Amman project, that actually asked for a multi-year allotment for those lodging pillows because I think they exceeded the number of lodging pillows for an annual year, but those were granted with the approval of that ordinance in 2019. So those kind of were calculated then. Those, again, a little bit of further color to that, those allotments stay valid through their vesting period. So if they continue to go appropriately through their land use vesting and into the vesting that comes along with a building permit, those allotments remain valid through that process.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Ben, what is, just kind of dovetailing Bill's, what is the vesting period for, is it 10 years or 5 years for?
For both of those projects, there was a special vesting granted for 5 years. Lift One Lodge has currently met their vesting obligations by submitting a building permit. That building permit is in review and has gone through, they're in the third round of review right now on that permit. We anticipate the Amman building permit, in fact, it's been submitted, is in review for completeness right now, I do believe. And so that vesting for both projects, you know, per the ordinances, went through December of 2025. So both projects had up until December of this year to get their building permit submitted.
But state statute gives a typical 3-year vesting.
Sam, I think, did you have some?
No, I'm ready for a motion. So.
Yeah, since we're talking about the Lift One corridor, can you tell me with the vested rights that are allotted, when are they required to break ground?
Consistent with any development project, and this is, I think, a topic in the community about the authority that we have and don't have to move get projects to move along. There's what's called statutory vesting, which comes from their land use approvals, typically 3 years by Colorado state law, can be extended by council action beyond that 3-year period, either at the time of approval or in an extension. But there's a second category of vested rights called common law vesting. And that means that once a project submits their building permit, they've taken what the law sees as common law action to keep that project moving forward and show a good faith response to the expectations to keep that development project going. And so once a project gets into building permit review, they're moving out of that statutory vesting and then now into common law vesting. And once that happens, as long as they're acting in good faith to continue that building permit, their vesting under their approvals continues to run.
Okay. So if both building permits are under review right now and you expect them to be picked up sometime soon, so each of those hotels has 3 years from the moment they pick up their, no?
No, it means that once, according to the International Building Code, this is not Aspen standard. Buildings remain in good standard if you're making, and they specify the kind of actions that you need to take to keep that permit moving forward and valid, both during the review process and then once issued. And so, you know, in the building code, once a building permit is issued, that they need to be taking meaningful action within 6 months.
Okay, one last question. What's the latest date that either hotel can break ground, or do you know the answer?
That is not specified.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Well, I think it's a very important topic, and it's a very important topic to the community. As a matter of fact, I think I was somewhere last evening, and a fellow that had been visiting Aspen for some 50 years asked me the question. He said, "Do you guys have no completion requirements for construction?" And I said, "Well, we've got a system, but it doesn't really hold any feet to the fire and stuff." But I was hoping that, you know, someday we could Aspen could get a handle on that. I also, as said before, I feel like this is the lump in the snake's throat, right? We've seen one developer in charge of over a dozen properties, starting projects, accumulating others, et cetera, and has not had the impetus to finish those projects. So I think that there still is future concern around this, but we should try to come up with something that encourage completion. Jim. All right. Other questions at this time? I think so.
I'll make a motion to pass resolution number 2, series of 2025.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
And just clarification, that the 235-year are not going to be carried forward or are going to be carried forward?
They're not
They're-
available.
they're not
We
available.
use the 2024 and the 2025 in 2024. So there are no demolition allotments available to be carried forward.
But in 2025, there will be two.
No.
No, however, and you know, I've spoken with Ben about this. As John pointed out, this council, previous as well, has seen those local demo permits approved. It's come to our table. The ComDev has had to deal with it in the sense that if one isn't available, then it's an appeal, essentially. Our community development for some of these latest appeals, I think, has worked with the applicant as much as possible on fees as well as timing. And so I could suggest adding additionals for this, but again, ComDev is looking at this. Staff is going to come back to us about that whole program, and I've had the assurance that the process for the appeal is not so onerous, much more onerous past the regular permit process, so we can get those permits out the door if there's an applicant that is deserving.
Yeah, and I might add to that any of these allotments, there's a provision within GMQS that allows you, as Ben had sort of mentioned in the lodging pillow scenario, you can reach forward into future year allotments for this year, which is what we did last year, right? We gave out 2 of the 2025 allotments in 2024. So there's always the ability to reach future years per city council's discretion.
With a motion and a second, could we have a roll call vote for resolution number 2?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. Resolution number 2 passes 5-0.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Haley. Thanks, Ben.
Mr. Mayor, staff is requesting the council go into executive session pursuant to CRS Section 246402-4B, conference with the attorney for the local public body for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions. 4E, determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, instructing negotiators, and 4F, personnel. Specific items of discussion involve the following: Wheeler, Belly Up, Aspen, MOU, Resolution Number 177, Series of 217, Eisenstadt claim for flood damages, discussion and negotiations regarding city attorney contract, discussion and negotiations regarding city manager review and contract. Council elects to go into executive session. The executive session will be recorded, and the recording will be maintained by the clerk for a period of not less than 90 days. As usual, we will convene the executive session downstairs in Electric Pass. It is my understanding we will not return to these chambers to adjourn.
Thank you very much.
I'll make a motion for executive session.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for executive session. Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote for going into executive session, please?
Counselor Doyle?
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. As was stated to our viewing public, we will be adjourning from downstairs. We would not be conducting any further business after the executive session. Thank you, as always, to Grassroots, to everybody that's joined us this evening or in the future. Have a good evening.